I once found myself sprinting through the dark wings of a theater to smash my palm on a giant red emergency stop button while the sounds of wood and metal colliding on stage crunched in my ears. And Starbucks is still the most stressful job I've ever had. It is a truth universally acknowledged that people in need of their morning coffee are often less than pleasant, less than patient, a little bit of both. Working the 5 a.m. opening shift at a Starbucks in Oklahoma was reminiscent of living through a hurricane. If you'll pardon the dramatic metaphor, obviously it wasn't really like living through a hurricane. You knew it was coming every day when you arrived and clocked in. That first half hour of prep work was the calm before the storm, and those experienced enough, or with decent levels of common sense, knew to prepare. You had to prepare. There was no option for escape other than claiming you were sick and going home, I guess. The storm was coming and you were gonna be riding it out, and if you weren't prepared, you would be neck high in floods by 6:30. At 5:30, the doors would open and the rain would start at a trickle, and you would deal with the trickle while also taking every free second to continue preparing for the downpour, because when the hurricane hits, you don't have any free time to help your future self. It is all survival of the here and now. The storm lasts about 2 hours every time, and then it drops back down to a trickle almost as suddenly as it started. Okay, yes, overly dramatic, fair enough. But here's the thing. I could never get other people to take the prep work on my station as seriously as I did, and as such, they would end up drowning. Sometimes instead of scheduling me at 5 a.m., they would stick me on a 6 a.m. shift. Better, you think? You can sleep in a little later. No. Coming in half an hour after the store opened and right at the same moment that the hordes started pouring in was the absolute worst. 'Cause whoever was there before me never did the full prep, and in half an hour we'd be sunk. I once stayed on the register and watched the assistant manager of our store attempt to work my typical station for the entirety of the morning rush. She cried. Actually, that happened twice. To quote the villainous Scar, "Be prepared!" Seriously though. So what was this horrid station that brought unending chaos upon your head until you burst into tears? The food station. Y'all, I worked at Starbucks for less than 6 months. I moved a lot back then, so 'twas bye-bye and back to cruise ships at the end of that. But in that time, despite being trained on it, as all new employees are, I think I worked a shift making drinks probably 10 times tops. Because they start you on the register and sometimes doing runner restock positions, and then they move you to the food station. 2 ovens, a mini fridge, the glass container of food on display. Generally, it was after you had done that for a while that they would move you over to making actual drinks. But I kind of got stuck with the ovens for good because people hated that position. They could not handle the stress. They ended up crying. I was the only person there who had a decent handle on that corner of the store, and there is one major reason for that. I'm kind of an efficiency expert. Not because of any official training or licenses, but just from pure obsession. Some people like bugs, some people like trains. I like efficiency. Finding the most efficient way to get a job done brings me copious amounts of satisfaction. Completing a whole series of tasks in a speedy, splendiferous series that wastes not a single moment or movement, ooh, it's good stuff, y'all. By the time I left my stint at Starbucks, I was very seriously considering emailing corporate a copy of my Guide to Food Station Efficiency. How thorough was my obsession? It mattered on what side of the cutting board you laid the tongs down. It mattered because the movement of reaching across yourself takes just a hair of a second longer than reaching straight forward. And in a situation this intense, you need those hairs. Those hairs add up to a good-sized ponytail eventually, so you care about each and every hair. Those who have never worked at Starbucks may still be wondering why this specific shift at this specific station was so intense. And let me not imply that the same shift over on the drink-making station was any better. If we didn't have one of our absolute pros working over there during rush hours, all hell would break loose. This specific Starbucks location was perhaps a bit worse than some of the others, although also perhaps not. I have no data to back up that claim. When I went in for an interview, I found out that the location, the building that I was sitting in, would soon be no more. Like, very soon. I went to train in a further away location because the one where I had actually been hired was closed the day after my interview. All of the employees were being moved to a shiny new Starbucks that had just been built down the street, over twice as big and, oh goody, sporting a drive-thru, an all-new feature for this crowd. The second that this shiny, new, twice as big, drive-thru-laden Starbucks location opened, it was, to return to my hurricane metaphor, flooded. Customers came pouring in, and the morning rush was way more intense than it had been before, but with the addition of people and cars. The drive-thru is a whole beast of its own. It's not just something that you're automatically good at. You can know the register really well, like the POS system, where every single button is on the screen, you barely need to look at it anymore, and still not be good on the drive-thru. I personally struggled on this position because I find it way harder to understand what a person is saying if I can't see their lips moving. I've actually had numerous jobs where I've had to communicate over radios or intercoms, and there was always an adjustment period for me, a very stressful one, where I was getting to know all of my coworkers' voices. But you can't get to know the voices of 5,000 random strangers. Also, did you know that the employees inside are being timed while you order? Or I guess your car in the drive-thru is being timed. The combo is being timed. Cars are only supposed to spend a certain amount of time in the drive-thru, regardless of whether they order a single iced drink or 12 breakfast wraps. The wraps in the drive-thru were the bane of my existence. Their required cook time was longer than the amount of time corporate said people should be in the drive-thru. Make that make sense. So our drive-thru was always backed up, and frequently what they were waiting on was food, because the food station was always backed up, and it just takes a set amount of time to properly heat each item as mandated. I think in some locations they maybe just don't sell food the way that we did in the morning rush. People really liked getting their entire breakfast from us. Those oatmeals, ugh. Those were second worst to prepare. Nothing beats the horror of the breakfast wrap. Almost immediately, the manager implemented the "park and we'll bring it out to you" method. This was a terrible choice. Not overall, most fast food places with drive-thrus do this. Also, I just have to interject here for anyone not from America watching this. Yeah, this is just how things are here. And anyone from America who's confused by that, drive-thrus are not really a thing in most other countries. Not like they are in most of America. Park and we'll bring it out to you was a terrible choice for us because we didn't have a specified runner or a spare human being 99% of the time. It fell to the food person to fulfill these deliveries. Now the person who is running the food station, who is already behind, literally always, has to fully exit the building to hand deliver food items to people in the parking lot. Meanwhile, you've either got empty ovens, which is a huge no-no in my Guide to Food Station Efficiency, or you've got items burning in the ovens. Also bad. We also didn't have a designated place for the waiting people to park their cars, so the drive-thru employee would literally just spout off a description to you, like silver Honda Accord, and you either had to remember that and which food item it went with until that food item was ready, or you had to take the time to write it down, and then you had to go search the whole parking lot looking for the car that matched that description. As you can imagine, this was horribly inefficient. I was more bothered by the inefficiency than the customer satisfaction levels, let's be real. I did become extremely well versed in what a person can accomplish in 10 seconds while on this job. It's way more than you think. I knew the exact amount of time that it would take me to walk to the very end of the counter, because of course the place where we had to drop the heated and bagged food was as far away from the food station as possible. Call a name and return to my ovens, and I knew exactly which items of food I could safely get heated during that time, and which I couldn't. Sometimes I would just carry my tongs with me because I didn't have time to put them down. For 2 hours, your brain had to be locked in, totally focused, constantly reassessing the situation and adjusting the next 8 steps you were going to accomplish in order to respond to the things that were happening around you. And this is best case scenario. This is if you actually prepared. Did I mention that some people did not get the importance of preparing? Maybe I was benefited by experience here. I had worked in a coffee shop, cafe sort of thing while I was in college. Never even close to as busy as Starbucks got, because we were in a tiny town, but unfortunately not run by the nicest people. They had these intense daily lists of every single task we were expected to complete, broken down into 5-minute increments, because the expectation was that we would never, ever once, while on our shift there, not be actively working. And they could tell because they had cameras all over the store to watch us with. Spend too long chatting with a customer and the phone would ring. It was only a little creepy. This isn't why I say they weren't the nicest, by the way. There was other stuff going on. But that is a different story. We were only given half an hour before opening to go through a massive list of prep work. 2 of us, 1 for the kitchen and 1 for front of house. And if you did not hustle through that list in the most multitasking way possible, you would not complete it in time. The difference here was that the consequence of not completing it was not angry customers, but rather angry bosses. Most of our morning customers were regulars who just wanted, a nice plate of eggs and a nice cup of coffee and a nice chat, which they did not get because we weren't allowed to stop working. Anyway, because of my 8 or so months working there, I was already accustomed to hustling your way through the first 30 minutes before doors are open to the public. Only, quite frankly, there was less to do at Starbucks and more people to do it. You just had to know to do it. When it came to prepping the food station, a lot of employees would get distracted by the display case. It's right there, empty for all the customers to see. It feels like the priority should be getting 1 of every single food item baked and prettily organized in that case before the open sign lights up. It's a mistake I made a couple of times at the start. It's a red herring. I don't think that's the right metaphor. It's there to distract you. Don't fall for it. The actual most important thing on the food station was a mini fridge under the counter. This is where the bulk of the food is. When people order their sausage sandwich and a sticker comes zipping out of the printer, you pull a plastic-wrapped, barely thawed chunk from this mini fridge, yank that plastic open, never touching the actual food because Lord forbid you have to put on gloves, ain't nobody got time for that. Slide the sandwich out with your tongs, place it in one of the ovens, hit the button to heat that sandwich for the corporate mandated length of time, then slide the sandwich back out of the oven with those same tongs and place it in a paper wrapper upon which you have smashed that sticker. You then walk the bag of sandwich down to the pickup zone of the counter and either scream out a name with all the diaphragm support you gained from a degree in musical theater, or stick it in the alphabetically labeled tray and skedaddle back to your station. That's the whole deal. Kinda. It varies. Some items aren't heated at all, which was a little party in my brain. Every time somebody ordered a non-heated item, there was just like full-on confetti flying up there. What I just outlined for you, so exciting, right, is what people tended to think of as the food station job. The problem was, thought didn't always extend very far beyond those tasks. How did the food that you needed end up in that mini fridge? How did every item on the Starbucks menu fit in there? What happens if somebody orders 18 double smoked bacon, cheddar, and egg sandwiches, which legitimately happened one time? Is the mini fridge Mary Poppins' carpet bag? No, of course not. You, the food station employee, are the person responsible for all of the food that is or isn't in that mini fridge. And trust me when I say you want all of the food you're gonna need for that 2-hour rush to be in there. That means you have to start your morning by fully stocking it, like so crammed full that the door will barely shut. And it's not the same amount of everything either. If the sandwich had bacon in it, I would put 3 times more in the fridge than anything else. Those little sous vide egg things, one of those. This was the thing, you had to know what sold in your specific store during this specific morning shift. Like, weekdays could be different than weekends, and you had to stock accordingly. So step 1 was just getting people to stock the fridge, which was already pulling teeth because they would rather stock the display case for some reason. Step 2 was getting them to stock it with the appropriate number of item to correspond with our typical sales. Good luck. Step 3 was where my efficiency obsession really got started. I wanted a map for that fridge, a layout guide. We needed to be stocking that fridge the exact same way every time, with the most requested items, sandwiches with bacon in them, in the front, where you wouldn't even have to pull the shelf out, and the least requested items in the back. It needed to always be exactly the same so that we could memorize where each item was and pull them without having to look down or give a second thought to the action. Do you know how much time is lost in the act of searching? It's why having these giant screens with all of these buttons on them in our cars now is kinda dangerous. You don't have time to search during the morning rush. You needed to have the menu on the ovens memorized so that you could hit the buttons without looking. You needed to have the map of your fridge memorized so that you can grab a sandwich without thinking. This is how efficiency on the food station works. Did I mention that I was 8, 9, 10 months pregnant while working at Starbucks? By the way, for anyone who wasn't aware, pregnancy lasts 10 months, not 9 months. I'm still flabbergasted that I didn't find that out until I was pregnant. My dance background came in handy for working at Starbucks during that last trimester, especially the couple years where I'd gotten super into pole dancing. See, there comes a time when your belly has gotten so big that you can no longer squat the normal way to stock the mini fridge under the counter with a plethora of pastries, but mostly double bacon sandwiches. Your only option is what we commonly think of as a sexy squat. You know, drop it like it's hot. And let me tell you, I could pop that squat right up till the last day. Literally, because I worked a shift at Starbucks the day before going into labor. So inevitably, when I would work those 6 a.m. shifts, I would come strolling in already way more stressed than if I had just gotten there at 5 a.m. and been responsible for my station setup. Whoever had been stuck there for the first hour would generally be thrilled to see me coming so that they could vacate that corner. First thing, I would check the fridge. 'Twas usually bare. That meant crossing beyond the great metal swinging doors to the back. Never a good idea while the store was open and you were working food. You could return from the back to find 15 stickers had printed while you were gone, and 5 of them were for the infamous wrap. Not good for the morale. But if someone ordered a bacon Gouda sandwich and you had just pulled your last bacon Gouda and bagged it for a customer, then you had no choice but to venture into the actual restaurant-sized fridges and freezers in the back. And here's where things could go downhill even more. Pretty much all of Starbucks food items arrive at the store frozen. They were stored frozen in these big boxes, and part of the night shift's job was to put a certain number of every item into the fridge to thaw for the next day's use. You can't put a frozen sandwich into the ovens. It will not actually get heated through properly. And usually, the night shift nailed it, so you could thoroughly stock your mini fridge in the morning, or at the very least, make your round trip run to the back as brief as possible if you happen to run out of something during the rush. But sometimes one item would be forgotten in the great thawing, or they would just think that we were out of a certain item because the box had gotten hidden in the freezers, or, heaven forbid, they would forget the thawing altogether. Disaster. You didn't mark the bacon Gouda sandwich as unavailable in the app because you didn't know that the only ones we have are frozen rock solid. In the amount of time it took for you to figure that out, far from your food station, you've gotten 4 more orders for bacon Gouda sandwiches. You now have 5 customers you have to watch for because they didn't order in the store, they ordered on the app. So you literally have to watch the end of the counter and wait for someone to look confused and upset by lack of bacon Gouda sandwich. Then you have to run on down there, confirm that it's them, explain to them that we're out, even though we really aren't, just everything that we have is frozen solid and we don't have a quick thawing method. Then ask if they want something else instead, after which you must run on back to your food station as fast as possible, put all the orders that are waiting on hold, and get this makeup order heated and bagged as fast as ovenly possible, which is never any faster because that's how timers work. And yes, 9 times out of 10, the customer is upset. They're upset that they ordered ahead to save time and then arrived to find their order not prepared. They're upset that these employees can't seem to handle the basic task of making an item unavailable in the app when they don't have any. They're upset that they will not be eating their beloved bacon Gouda sandwich this morning. They're upset that they have to stand there for another 3 minutes and 47 seconds while you prepare a piece of food that they didn't really want but they already paid for and they most certainly are not leaving without. And fair enough. As the employee, you want to say it's just coffee or it's just a sandwich. But the reality is that for many people, it's not just that. It's being late to work or to drop off or pick up their kids. It's a gut punch to their established routine. It's a treat that they're being denied. It's yet another thing not going well after a long, terrible night shift. Their morning coffee and sandwich may seem not that important to them if it's delivered on time, perfectly, how they wanted it, with no flubs or mistakes. But when stuff goes wrong, sometimes it's way more. And I get that. It's good to remember, though, that we are also human on the other side of the counter. We are also exhausted, or worried about something personal, or frustrated as crap at a coworker, or running on fumes this morning, or any number of other things. Customer service jobs take a lot out of you. I've had physically exhausting jobs that I found preferable to the mental and emotional exhaustion of interacting with 20 to 100 strangers in an hour while also juggling a seemingly unending list of tasks that you are late on completing before you even started. And look, I'm not gonna pretend that every single Starbucks employee you ever run across is just absolute stressed out gold doing their absolute best to not disappoint any coffee craving customers. There are always gonna be people who can't seem to follow basic service standards. We had one at our location. She was young, probably still in high school. I'm assuming this was her first job, and it felt like she had been placed there against her will. Maybe she had dreams of a much cooler first job, maybe she didn't want to be working at all, maybe something entirely different was going on in her personal life. We don't know her story. But she never really made it past the register shift, where she would often park herself with her arms crossed, her back to the door, the entire room, all of the customers, only dragging herself around to face someone if they specifically asked her to, take their order. One of our nicest regulars lodged the most apologetic complaint about her to me. And being the hormonal pregnant woman that I was, I nearly burst into tears while relaying the message to the manager, who seemed way more upset at my closeness to sobbing than the upset customer. But you know, be nice to your barista. Their job is stressful and difficult. Try not to drain any more of their mental energy than you have to, because they have a finite amount, though some people more than others, and who knows how low it's running at the moment when you're interacting with them. Same goes for any customer service position, really. It was during my time at Starbucks that I learned that singing quietly to myself helps regulate my brain. If you got real close to me while I was busy slamming oven doors open and closed, you probably would have heard me softly singing Hosier's work song. It seemed fitting in title and also has a great calming rhythm to it. I've had moments in my life, or on jobs, that were more stressful than working the food station during a morning rush at Starbucks. But I have never had another job that was as consistently stressful as Starbucks was. I once worked as an auditor for a traveling dance competition. Yes, that's a real job, and one that I was highly ill-suited for. It involved three main things: interacting with people, dealing with technology, and doing math. Add to that a heavy dose of sleep deprivation because we worked 17 to 21-hour days with no breaks, and let's just say, it wasn't my favorite work experience. I had so many weird and random illnesses while I was on that job, starting during training itself. It was definitely my most unhealthy work experience. You know, if you go to Disney World on October 31st, all of the parks are decorated for fall and Halloween, and then if you show up the very next day, they're magically Christmas now. Well, I did that job. Overnight shifts, major deadlines, miles of walking. The things that went on in that warehouse of tinsel and ornaments. It was oddly the most dramatic work environment I've ever been in. For a while, I was casting background performers for a TV show that was filming at Universal Studios in Orlando. There's actually full-on working sound stages behind the theme park, but not a lot of parking, not enough for crew and background at least. So I spent the bulk of my days power walking miles in the August Florida heat to pick up actors from the front gate and get them to set, all sweaty and stinky, just like wardrobe likes them. I had to carry deodorant and extra shirts with me because I was just wet all the time. That might have been my most physically exhausting job. But Starbucks will always take the cake as the most stressful. I don't go to Starbucks anymore for a variety of reasons. But the oldest and most original reason was that I don't like the taste of their coffee, and I can't bring myself to eat most of their food items after having worked there. They got rid of the salad that sustained me for those 6 months. But anytime I'm in a coffee shop or a cafe or any restaurant where you can see the employees working behind the counter, where you can see them interacting with each other or not interacting, where you can see them bent over their tasks in concentration, I find myself watching and analyzing both their stress levels and their efficiency expertise. Because Lord knows, I know, you can be efficient as crap and stressed as crap at the same time. My level of people watching probably comes off slightly creepy. I'm like a little alien gathering data for a research paper on human behavior. But really, I'm just trying to analyze your emotional state so that should I end up having to interact with you, I can have as little negative effect as possible on your remaining mental energy. 'Cause I know what it feels like to be drained. Check in on the flamingo. It's coming along. I should not drink this coffee over this embroidery, should I? Y'all, I hate leaf blowers. They need to not exist. Like, sorry if you love them, but like, no. 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 Fencing and toilets. Wow. I feel like I gotta turn it this way because she's cute. Look at your cute little face. Why?